Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishapanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Ansha Kapatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll begin on chapter 15, which is entitled Yoga, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushotama Yoga. And we'll begin on text number 12. Text 12, chapter 15. And we can read the Sanskrit and translations together. Text 12. Yadaditya gatam tejo jagad vasayate kilam yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo vidhimamakam. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Text 13. Gama Vishya Chaputani Darayam Yaham Ojasa Ushnami Choshati Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Text 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Anapana Samayukta Vachamyanam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in every living body, and I am the air of life, outgoing and incoming, by which I digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. Text 15. Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishto matasmiti jnanam apohanam cha Vedaischa sarve aham eva vedyo vedanta kritveda vid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas am I to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. 16. Avima Purusha Loke Ksharas Chakshara Evacha Ksharas Savani Bhutani Kutashto Kshara Uchyate. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible. In the spiritual world, every entity is called infallible. Text 17. Uttama Purushastvanya Paramatmeti Udharitha Yo Lokatrayam Avishya Vipartya Vyaya Ishvaraha. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. Text 18. Ismaksharam atitoham aksharad apichotamaha atosmi loke vede vachita purushotamaha. Because I am transcendental, beyond both fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. Text 19. Yo mam evam asamurdho janati purushottamam sasarva vid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is to be understood as the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharat. Text 20. Iti guyatamam shastram idam uktam mayanganakaha etad budva buddhiman sat krityascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Chapter 16. The divine and demoniac natures. Text 1 through 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam Sattva Samshurhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastiti Dhanam Tamascha Yagyascha Swadhyayas Tapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrothas Taga Shanam Dayabhute Shaloluptam Mardavam Hriya Chapalam Tejakshama Pratishalcham Droho Nadhimanita Vapanti Sambatam Daivim Apijatasya Bharata. The blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion, and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So we can return to text 12 of chapter 15, and we'll read the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yaraditya gatam tejo jagad basayate kilam yats chandramasi yats chagnao tat tejo vitimamakam. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire also come from me. Report. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place. The beginning a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material. Here with the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole solar system. There are different universes and solar systems, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without His mercy, there cannot be sun. Without His mercy, there cannot be moon. And without His mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Maharaj, would you like to comment? So does anybody remember how chapter 15 began? What we read yesterday? Yes, Jagannath Prabhu. Yes, he gave the analogy. Krishna gave the analogy of a banyan tree. Does everybody here know what a banyan tree is? Okay, if anybody's ever been to Asia, then it's pretty hard to miss a banyan tree. They're pretty remarkable. They grow like a normal tree. You know, they have a seed, it grows up into a tree, but then it extends branches. And from these branches, more roots fall down from each branch. So there's hanging roots from every single branch. And from these roots, they reach the ground eventually. And when they reach the ground, the roots take hold of the earth, and then it actually starts forming new trees. So then more branches form, more roots come, and more trees come. So you pretty much can't distinguish which is the original tree and what's an offshoot of the tree. So Krishna's giving the analogy of this banyan tree because he's saying, you need to cut down this tree. This is the tree that we're stuck in the material world. He's using this analogy because we're completely stuck and we think we're trying to enjoy, but there's no enjoyment to be found. And just one last thing about banyan trees, I was looking up. There's the world's biggest known banyan tree is 4 acres big. I don't know if everybody knows what an acre is, but that's like this whole block pretty much. So they get really, really big and they spread out, and it's like a whole web, a maze of roots and trees and branches and everything. So that's just a testament of how Krishna is saying how stuck we actually are in this material world. So we could ask, why is Krishna describing this? So who remembers what was discussed in the 14th chapter? Yes, Mogadari. The modes of material nature. So the banyan tree, Krishna says, is nourished by these modes of material nature. The water, the sustenance for them is the modes of material nature. So Krishna is describing the modes of material nature to show the position that we're stuck in, that, he describes in the 13th chapter, the knower of the field of activities. Kshetra, Gya, Kshetra, and super soul, basically. He's describing the person within inside the body. In each soul is given a body, the field of activities that they have, that they know. But then there's also the object of knowledge, which is beyond that, and the super soul, which is residing within all living entities. So then Krishna, he describes, and I think it's chapter 13, text 22. Yeah, Purusha Prakriti Stohi Punkte Prakriti Jan Gudan Karanam Guna Sangosha Sadasadyoni Janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species. So due to the association of these material modes, we're going from body to body to body, trying to enjoy in all sorts of different spheres of life. So then Krishna, at the end of that chapter, he gives, what does he say exactly? He describes how the living entity who is within the body, but realizes that he's not the body and realizes that he's just the witness of the body, he is eligible for the supreme goal, which is to transcend these modes of material nature and ultimately come to the point of knowing Krishna. So then in the 14th chapter, he's giving detailed knowledge of what these modes of material nature actually are. Because if one is to transcend them, one needs to know what he's actually up against. There's a saying that you should keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So we need to be hyper aware of these modes of material nature and how they affect us. So then we can become aware that, in what I'm doing is in acting in line with my pure consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, completely spiritual consciousness. Or is it just being influenced by the modes of material nature? And we can observe our past and see how it has always been like that. So then at the end of the 14th chapter, Krishna says two significant things. He says in text 26 of chapter 14, Mam chayo vyapicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatithyaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. And then text 27. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya chitarmasya sukhasya ikantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. So Krishna is saying that one who takes the full devotional service, he doesn't fall down, he immediately becomes transcendental to the modes of nature. And Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, he comes up to the Brahman platform, which is the spiritual platform. And later on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna elaborates. I think it's text 54 of chapter 18. I could be wrong. Brahma bhuta prasanatma nashochati na kangshati samasaveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. He says one who's fixed in this Brahman platform, he's equal to all living entities. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. He sees with the equal vision all these living entities. And he neither hankers nor laments for anything. He's completely satisfied with what he has. So Krishna is saying that one who engages fully in devotional service can transcend these modes of material nature and come to that platform. And then he finishes by saying, I am the basis of that impersonal Brahman, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So even if one, seemingly by their own efforts, conquers the modes of material nature and comes to this Brahman platform, this spiritual platform, Krishna is saying that it's me. I am that Brahman platform. So then chapter 15, which we've been reading yesterday and today, which is, I think, the shortest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives this analogy of the banyan tree. And like I mentioned, he describes how it's nourished by these gunas, the modes of material nature. And it's really nice. He says the twigs are the sense objects. And I was trying to think of this because, the twigs are always outreaching. They're always growing. They're always extending more and more. And then its secondary roots, like I mentioned, the original root of this tree is coming from the spiritual world because everything is coming from Krishna. That's why he says it's a reflection. So we're seeing it opposite. We're seeing just an illusion of reality. Imagine you're in Bhagavatam class, you're a little tired, it's the morning time, you go downstairs, it's time for prasadam, jai, you go downstairs and you go reach for the prasadam, but, instead of there being prasadam, there's just like a hologram. You just, you touch it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't do anything, you just look at it. There's no pleasure, no satisfaction. It's actually frustrating. So that's what's going on in this material world, is that there's no substance. We're seeing a reflection of reality. And Maharaj was mentioning this yesterday, I believe. So that's the main root is coming from the spiritual world, but the secondary roots, like I explained, it has these branches going out and it's shooting more and more roots down. These roots are representing our fruit of actions, our karma, the things that get us more entangled in this world, because we're extending more towards the objects of the senses, and then more roots are forming, and we're becoming more and more and more attached. And the branches that are, one of the main parts of the tree, this is all the different species, the different planets, the different roles that we could play within the material world. And quickly, we could go, there's a picture. It's on plate, I don't know which plate, but it's a very good picture describing this analogy. Plate 35. And you could see on this picture of this banyan tree on the bottom, there's all these animals and living entities. There's reptiles, and a little higher up, there's cows, and then there's like some kind of barbarian kind of people. And then it goes up and up. And at the top of these branches, it's all the demigods and like the higher positions in the material world. So this is the branches of the tree. It's showing all the different roles or positions or species that we can embody within the material world. And then the fruits, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. This is what everybody's pursuing in the material world in one way or another. Pursuing some kind of religiosity. They want economic development. They want to fulfill their lusty desires. Or if you're frustrated from all these, then you want moksha. See, desire is what's separating this banyan tree between the reflection of the spiritual world. So it's about what do we desire? Are our desires in line with the soul's desires, which is to serve Krishna? Or are our desires limited to this material world, which is just striving after this illusion, this hologram, this temporary satisfaction? So Krishna, he describes this banyan tree, and then he says you need to cut down this banyan tree with the weapon of detachment. Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. And I was thinking about this because I'm going to skip ahead. I'm kind of trying to go get an overview of this whole section of why Krishna's talking about what he's talking about, so we can get a true grasp of what's being said. Who knows what chapter 16 is about? Or the title of chapter 16? Yes. Divine and demoniac natures. And we read the first 3 texts. And what were the first 3 texts about? Divine qualities. So if one is pursuing the right path on this tree, one will develop these heightened qualities, these divine qualities. But then if one disregards the scripture, which is pretty much the conclusion of the 16th chapter, Krishna says, Yashastra vidam utruja navartate kama kardata nasasiddham avapnoti nasukam na param gatim. If one disregards the scripture, then one will be lost. He'll neither be happy, he will not gain perfection, he will not attain the supreme destination. So we have to follow the scripture, the Vedas, and this is what Krishna is speaking about in this 15th chapter, actually, is the importance of the Vedic text, and not just the importance of it, but the essence of it. So Krishna is saying you need to cut down this tree with the weapon of detachment. Then he goes on in the next text to talk about how the jiva is part and parcel of Krishna. He says the living entities are just fragmental. Where is it? Text 7. The living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. So, before this, Krishna describes what the spirit, he describes the banyan tree, the conundrum that we're stuck in. He describes briefly what the spiritual world is like, and then he describes how the living entities are actually just fragmental parts of him. And basically, he makes the point that we'll never be happy unless we actually go back to that spiritual world and serve him. This is the only way that we can actually be happy. And one who's endeavoring on this path and traversing this path to cut down this tree can clearly see what's going on. You can clearly see the perils of what everybody else does for enjoyment. You can see that it's just entangling and it leads nowhere, and it just breeds more and more roots, more branches, more different options, chewing the chewed in different ways. But one who's not endeavoring on this path, they can't see that. They can't see it at all. So, and I'm sure a lot of us have our own experiences, maybe telling family or friends or preaching. Some people kind of get it and some people don't get it at all. So This leads to the verses that we read today, where Krishna is talking about he's the sun, the moon, he's the gravity and all the planets. Or rather, he holds the planets intact. He provides the essence for all plants to grow. So Krishna, before in the Bhagavad Gita, in a few different places, has described his opulences. So, what's the difference between what Krishna is describing here and there? Because there's a whole chapter pretty much where Krishna is just saying, of this, I am that, I am the greatest of this, whatever you can imagine, I am that, and I'm beyond that. Here, Krishna is saying, I'm the sun, the moon, fire. We rely upon these things to live, which Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport. External things we need to live. And then beyond that, he says he's the fire of digestion. He's the prana, the life air, by which food gets digested. And then the famous shloka, Sarvasya chaham hriday sanivishto matasmitir gyanamapohanam cha vidaishcha sarvir ahameva vedyo vedanta kridveda videva chaham. He's the cause of knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance. So Krishna is both the sustenance of all the living entities for everything externally and also internally. So we're completely reliant upon Krishna. Krishna's establishing that fact that he is the maintainer in all levels. And then he describes how there are the different living entities, the fallible and the infallible. He can enter into the material world and be still completely unaffected by the world's material nature. He's both everything and beyond, inside and outside. Krishna's transcendental language made imaginable, which Krishna spoke in this 15th shloka that by all the Vedas he's to be known. He's the source of the Vedas and the knower of the Vedas. And then at the end, one of the other shlokas we read, in text 19, it says, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of God and bow down is to be understood as the knower of everything. And he therefore engages himself in full devotional service. So this is the essence of the Vedas. Is to know Krishna in full. And when you're convinced of Krishna's position, naturally you'll want to give everything to him in service, 24 hours a day. We might not be able to gain that, but we're practicing to cultivate the consciousness to serve him at all times, to think of him at all times, remember him at all times. But this goes back to what Krishna said in the end of the 14th chapter, where he said, one who engages in devotional service, steady devotional service, he immediately becomes transcendental to the world's material nature. So Krishna said we need to cut down this boundary tree with the weapon of attachment. And it reminds me of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it's the Shloka. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yogi Nirvishita Jadniyati Ashivaya Gyam Chiyadavaitikam. I render devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, one develops automatically because this knowledge of attachment. So it said that transcendental knowledge, the lecture I heard from that he was talking about the shloka that when we get transcendental knowledge, we'll realize that I'm not this body. I'm a spirit soul, I'm eternal. They have nothing to do with his body, I have nothing to do with his material world. And naturally from that comes, because if you realize this world is temporary, there's a whole system that's going on that's perfectly arranged. I just was unaware of it. And I have nothing to do with it at all. But I'm actually a spiritual being that's eternally full of bliss, and I don't belong here. then what do we have to do with anything? With natural detachment. So, in this way, by knowing the essence of the Vedas, which is to know Krishna, and rendering service to Him, we can become fixed in detachment, and then have found this Mon-Fri, which is source of all of our miseries and all of our suffering. So then, then we got to chapter 16 and text 1 through 3. It's describing all these really great qualities, which he says these transcendental qualities of Samavara belong to godly men and godly divine nature. You know, all the good qualities that we can think of: fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault finding, compassion and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities of self-conformance belong to godly men and godly nature. I mean, when we hear and study this Bhagavad Gita, life becomes very clear. It's very clear. Why we're here, what to do, how to do it, and why we want to do it, and what happens if we don't do it. And practically speaking, once you come in contact with this knowledge, you have more and more realization of that. When you serve Krishna, everything's exciting, everything's nice, everything's slow. And as soon as you sway away from that a little bit, the mind gives you so much disturbances, the senses give you so much disturbances, so much nonsense going on. And we're so jacked up to this age of Kali, our conditioned natures are so attached to thinking and feeling and willing in so many different ways. And you know, like the example of this pumpkin tree with the sun picture. There's so many different living entities that are thinking and feeling and willing in so many different ways. They're all trying to enjoy. All trying to enjoy separately with Krishna. Please Krishna. Then instantly when we become satisfied in which I have loved. You know, and I always need to mention this is a great experiment. Sometimes this and the cognizance of this, realize this, you know exactly what he's talking about. Other times, not so much. We're a little bit more fallen, a little bit more covered by the nature. You have to make this experiment again and again. I don't want to get up to bed. I don't want to go to Shri Books today. Let me just go do it. Let me do it with Krishna. Get out there. But there's a deeper feeling of purpose that you did the right thing. But sometimes, at least in my experience, most of the times, you're in that position when you make the decision to go out. Really amazing things happen. So, this is Krishna really taking hold of our lives and showing us that, this is His mercy, that by serving me, He'll be happy. I forget whenever I read the last class, I was really talking at this point that Krishna is self-satisfied, He's Atma, He does not need us. Like, think about us, we might think, okay, I'll be completely okay on my own. If you just give me this and give me that, whatever arrangement for me to be happy, and just leave me alone, I'll be good. But how many times have you been alone, and after some period of time, you felt bored, you felt lonely, you felt disconnected, you felt easy? Krishna doesn't have this. Krishna is only self-satisfied in His own. So, by Him speaking this Bhagavad Gita and helping us cut down this Bhagavad tree, then it's His mercy upon us. By us serving Him, Krishna has nothing to gain. It's only us that has something to gain. Into devotion. and interesting thing to cross over, because we're so conditioned to doing this fruit. I'm gonna do this action because I want this result. I want this reward. This is mine. I deserve this. Thinking what we deserve to be happy is actually cause of suffering. The devotee can easily see this and puts his own enjoyment aside and puts Krishna and Guru's enjoyment on top of his enjoyment. And he realizes that that brings his enjoyment. The material world, especially taking birth in this place of America, people have this idea that I'm entitled to be happy, I deserve to be happy. We don't really. There's this little ant we see on the ground, just like deserve to be happy. Does he deserve to be thankful? There's the trees that they cut down, and all the living entities that just get kicked around and nobody cares about. They kill the cows, they kill the chickens, left them out. And they keep them in like crazy groups. It's like that's awful. Do they deserve happiness? Why do we deserve happiness, but they don't deserve happiness? This is ludicrous with happiness, demonic. Krishna is the source of all, and if we give pleasure to him, actually will be satisfied. This is both Brahman, the style of all commission, Siddham Sarva Movement, Yadvam Shan Initiative. Krishna is the benefactor, the well-wisher of all living entities. All austerities and sacrifices are meant to be for the purpose of pleasing Krishna. Those who know this, because they're deep in the country. And now I'll just give this one analogy that I really like. Imagine we're all sitting around the pond with a little stone in the water. Stone that represents the mind. And the idea is our desires, our beliefs, they're all created with the rules. And if you take all the rules of the whole, everybody's going to stones in this pond, which is chaotic. There's no harmony. This country thinks this way, this person thinks this way, their family has to do this person has to do that. But if we just put Krishna in the center, we can see this amongst the devotees. And then we put Krishna in the center, and then we put in the stone and that. Right. Maybe occasionally we have a few little loose gravel going on, creating a different wavelength effect. Because we're not pure, we're in the shower. We need to tolerate those around us and recognize the importance of who's here with us. Krishna says one of thousands comes to this process of trying to understand him. Only one of them, 1,000 of them actually comes to know the full. How many people are in this city, this country, how many trees, how many ants, how many flowers, how many bugs, how many plants, and how many few living entities actually come here every day, or at least most every day. You want to wake up and leave about 1 feet and sleeping, and sit for 2 hours every day, and just can't. When your mind's telling you. Lay down and sleep. Sleep is a facade. These are the austerities that we get to do it, and it's important that we recognize how special it is to the devotees that are out that are actually partaking in this journey too. Because Krishna doesn't allow them to approach some Krishna's mercy. Just like sometimes it's about it. I said that nobody enters from down. So it's easy to get caught up in offenses or see things on the material platform. But people did do faults, really care the flaws, faults, nervous. We can't understand this mercy of the Lord because, as he mentioned, he's completely defiled and he's above everything. We just need to realize that, yeah, I'm stuck in this tree, I'm attached to it. Detached no more.
So what do I have to do with that? I'm dependent upon this. They're my own issues. They're actually real issues. Even though you might not get along with them, be the best of friends, everybody's down here supporting one another, and we should continue to go on that way to learn to support others. We share, discuss Krishna and Prabhu, ask questions, review them on. So the devotees around us have so much experience into the spiritual life. We're actually humble. We'll be able to see that. So anybody have any comments or questions? Strike patient. So text, chapter 15, text 19. Whoever knows who he is a supreme personality of God. Without having this to be understood as the Lord of everything, he needed therefore himself before the Lord exposed in the Bible. I'm curious about this. Curious about this really full devotional service. Krishna is describing the Vedas. He's describing that he's the essence of the Vedas. And he's talking about how the Vedas describes the infallible, infallible. And beyond that is the transcendental Lord. You see, that's him. It's I am transcendental. Beyond both all these. And then he says, I am somebody both in the world and in the Vedas. That's the person. So then full devotional service. Krishna earlier said, we just want to do a limited service. But if you understand, Krishna is the source of everything. Everything. Like you mentioned, he's the sun, he's the fire, he's the moon. We can't see without Krishna. We can't breathe without Krishna. The prana. We can't digest food without Krishna. We can't remember, we can't think, we can't have knowledge without Krishna. And this is just what Krishna gave as a specific example, but you could take this specific example and broaden it and see that whatever that I rely on externally and internally they belong everything. So one realizes that why the other delegation fully with the motion speaks. That you might realize that to some extent there's jnana, there's vijnana, and we might endeavor full devotional service because we're conditioned. We may not be there, so we have to work towards being there. And that's what Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita, which we think is a whole. Because, yeah, of course, he says, and the end, discernment to me, and all God, and all everything else, opposite we have to be. I think, we mentioned the Bible to class this morning. How long does it take to know Krishna? 1 second. Just follow that slogan, surrender everything to Krishna. So that's all that it takes. It's not hard. Oh, I can't really do that because we're attached. So Krishna is saying, you take this weapon of attachment and cut down this tree, this illusion that we're stuck in. But then he gives all these processes and methods in the Bhagavad Gita for us to raise our consciousness to that point. Maybe the final system. Yeah, knowledge is coming.
There's some volumes, like the meaning in all respects. We're running to go to church in all respects. We look at that from early. He's 28, he's also in his Krishna, and when speaking, he's one Krishna, and when hearing, he's one Krishna. Now, I'm going to say, according to the business world, engaging in business, we can't always hear about Krishna if we're speaking of other things. How can he be in full of body? Well, he has to think, I'm doing this for Krishna, this is my service. And Krishna is the beneficiary of my service. I'm giving whatever I get from this service, I'm doing it to Krishna. That's, again, whatever he does during the day is all involving all Krishna. The austerity he goes through, and he's why we're living in you only have austerities with one. But he's offering you Krishna, trying to be your servant. Always think of this. Always think of this. Right. That. In all, every respect, cleaning, there is bodily cleanliness, house cleanliness, vehicle cleanliness, even how he speaks. And he doesn't tell lies just because no one else is around. No, he speaks truthfully in all circumstances. And so many things, and so many instructions that are given how to different circumstances. And he's trying body and some body in all respects, all 24 hours of the day. This little example of that. And what is and I went to a meeting of the churches really going to India, and they all got the room. And but when the boys got up, get up around 3:30 in the morning, and that and go and when they went to their day, people were changed. And we do that. We just go over they're impressed. It is impressive. One actually does it.
Yes, Jagannath, you can say something real quick. Thank you, Paul.
So, how do we stand up for what's right? And when do we know when to let the foot off the gas? You were speaking about doing what's right. I get confused with this sometimes. When preaching, you don't know whether to drag somebody or to just go with the flow. So when do you know when to do this?
Well, then you always put it up in the higher states. You know, so if I go out preaching, then I just tell them, you're a demon, you're a heathen, you're the 16th chapter of the Gita, you're my God. What you're willing to do, spin them further away from devotions. Like one of the offenses against the holy name is to instruct the faithless in the glories of chanting. Because it will bring more harm than good. It's better to try to get them to chant or get them a book so they can read and understand. You know, but with time and practice and guidance of senior devotees, you can see and learn how to engage people according to where they're at. That's the key. You see, this person, he has no philosophical information. He's completely confused in his philosophy and doesn't really want to change it, but he has the capacity to do construction. Oh, yes, we have much need for construction of the temple. Would you like to help us? Use a paper to service. Krishna said it's better not to be here than little similar to the condition, and better to engage in the service. But practically speaking, observing senior devotees and, over time, we can learn more about what the problem is. Unfortunately, there's usually some trial and error involved. And then meet people get into a debate about some other religion or some other belief, and you do because you're super attached, you're super passionate, and you're going to walk away and you're alcoholic. And you do it, they're not going to change, you're not going to change, you're just disturbing your own mind. So we try to speak the philosophy to those who are receptive. And if somebody does have another belief and they are open to having a dialogue, maybe that's there, but shouldn't waste your time so much when there's so many other people we could reach, or we could advance more Krishna consciousness. Because I've met people who they have their own belief structure and we speak to them, and it's like speaking to a brick wall. Because they're like atheistic, they're stuck in this belief system, and this you can tell them the sound logic and philosophy, but they just don't accept it. They're going back to what they've been thinking over and over. It's a waste of time. Yeah, Rishi. Last day.
I just wanted to add a quick example to what you're saying of like not wasting our time in preaching. On like battlefields, the medical crews that go out, and when the people are like bleeding out at the end of a big battle, they go and get the ones that are most likely to survive first. Yeah, I think that's enough on that.
Yeah, but after they get a lot of people have the chance to survive, and then they go back and say,
Yeah.
Show me about the pizza, jazz, I don't want jazz, the